Welcome everyone. This is our inaugural San Diego Imperial Region Office Hour. I'm Wendy Smith. I'm your Guided Pathways Regional Coordinator, and I'm here with my partner, Stacy Teeters. There we are. We're here to support colleges in their Guided Pathways efforts and make this whole cotillion a success. So next slide, please. We're having today's office hour to have the colleges in the region be talking to each other more about what they're doing, because we believe that's the most effective way to make progress. If you can keep talking to each other on what you're doing, how it's going, problem solve together, I think we can have a really strong region. The Guided Pathways leaders voted on today's topic, which is Metamajor design. And next month we'll be having a student participation in Guided Pathways. So stay tuned for that. Our panelists today are your colleague, Wendy Nelson from Palomar College, team lead for Guided Pathways. Your other colleague, Sophia Armenta from Cuyamaca College, who was a counselor there and awesome Guided Pathways lead. We've also invited two of our fellow regional coordinators, Dr. Lara-Brady, who is a regional coordinator for the Central Valley Motherlode region, and the wonderful Katherine Bergman from the Bay Area, who actually invented the office hour. And I saw her present one, and I thought it went really well and was very successful. So thank you for that, Katherine. So as I said, today's topic is Metamajor design. It was the most popular one among all of you, and so that's what we're talking about today. We're going to start with Wendy Nelson, who's going to tell us about Palomar Pathways. We'll save questions until she's told her story, her origin story. And in the meantime, you can put your questions in chat and we can address them afterwards, and then we'll move on to Sophia at Cuyamaca. And I'm sure that since so many of you have been through Guided Pathways Metamajor implementation, that you'll have a lot to contribute to the discussion as well. Wendy, I'm happy for you to take it away.
Right. So I'm Wendy Nelson. I'm the curriculum co-chair at Palomar College and also one of our Guided Pathways leads. We sort of split up the leadership by each one of, we have 4 pillar leads, so each one of us has a pillar. Establishing the Metamajors was in pillar 1, so that's my area. So that's why I volunteered to present today. Although Kelly Falcone, one of my partners, was also very, very involved in this whole Metamajor process. So it feels like we've been doing this for 4 years, but I guess it's only been 2 as I went back and really started looking at when we did things. So I sort of just organized my slides on where we started and where we're at now. So you can go ahead. So we really started the whole Metamajor process last school year, so 2018-19, and we started with a Metamajor card swap activity. And gosh, I think we ended up doing between 20 and 25 different card swaps. We took the card swaps to all of our governance councils, into the classroom. I think we went into about 8 or 10 classrooms and had students participate. And then we had several just open sessions where faculty could come in and participate in the card swap. I have a picture up of this activity. We were lucky one Friday, we had some high school students that were visiting campus and we had them do it. And that was really interesting, some of the results. So that was our first big step into trying to figure out where we were going to go. And at the same time, we completed all of our degree and certificate maps. We thought that they were going to be really useful in determining our Metamajors, but in the end, we didn't use them. So it was still great that we got them done. And important for a step later on. We then invited research and planning to sort of take part in the process, and we looked at our COKI data. So we wanted to look at our course taking patterns, but instead we looked at the COKI data, which is all of our curriculum data, to see where we had students that were taking similar classes for specific degrees. So they did an analysis of that. And then at that same time, we held several different coffee talk sessions where we invited faculty to come and just talk about Metamajors, talk about some of the research that we were doing and what we were looking at. We sent out a survey to all of our faculty with examples of all of the different community colleges. I think we had maybe 5 different colleges in the survey. Which ones do you like? Which ones do you, not like? And, what are your suggestions? So we wanted to try to get faculty input right away. I mean, that was our goal when we first started talking about the Metamajors. We knew there would be, some fear and concerns around establishing these Metamajors. Was it going to change the way our college was organized? And so we really tried to include faculty as much as possible. And all of the work that was being done around these different activities was all faculty led. So, right, next slide. So we started over the summer, a small group started looking at the data that Instructional Planning, had developed. And so then we brought that information back to the big council, and then also, I think it was last spring, so a year ago, when we sent out the research or the survey for faculty to complete. So we did some analysis on that, like what do people like, what didn't they like. A lot of folks liked the Bakersfield Metamajor organization. That was one that we had a lot of people. So anyways, we really analyzed that. I'll be honest with you, at the very beginning of the whole process, I personally thought we should just go with Miracosta's Metamajors because we're right next door, and our students swirl. So I kept coming back to that, but I guess I'm happy that we took a different sort of path. So all of the data from the COKI data and the card sort, we discussed that and moved some things around in the Guided Pathways Committee, but we basically used all that information to finalize our sort of initial clusters. Then we went ahead and sent those, and that was, actually, it was easier than I thought it was going to be. And I will say one of the most interesting parts of that conversation is that we have 4 Guided Pathways student ambassadors that are very active in our process. They come to all of the meetings, they meet outside. So they were very invested, and they gave us a lot of feedback, and many times it was the complete opposite of what faculty were saying. And so that was good for our faculty to hear. And I think it did, affect the final clusters. So we sent those out to faculty again to get feedback. What do you think about these clusters? We wanted to make sure they were part of the process. We also took the clusters to Faculty Senate, to the Curriculum Committee to get feedback. And, I don't think it really sunk in what we were doing. We didn't get as much feedback as I thought we would. The survey feedback was pretty good, and we did move some things around based on that feedback. But I didn't see the percentage of faculty, especially full-time faculty, engaged as I had hoped. I think this next year, as we implement them, we're going to hear a lot more about how they like or dislike the Metamajors that we've selected. Okay, I can go to the next slide. So in addition to surveying our faculty, we also sent out a survey to our community partners. So Cal State San Marcos, Miracosta, and then all of the different high school representatives in our area to see what they thought about the Metamajors. And so it was all over the place. We actually asked them about the clusters, but we had at this point had our initial names for the Metamajors. And so we wanted some feedback on that. And I think that was probably one of the most interesting conversations that we had at Guided Pathways, to really stop and think about, are we just naming these things the same as we always have in terms of our divisional organization? And we did in many ways. I'm hopeful that that will change in the future, but a lot of our faculty were, I think, a little bit fearful of going sort of outside of that comfort zone. So we got some feedback, we had more discussion, and then with that feedback, our Guided Pathways Committee, which is not part of our governance process, it's an outside committee. We finalized the Metamajor clusters and then came up with our name, and Palomar Pathways is the name of our Metamajor clusters. In the meantime, we also adopted the Bakersfield Mapper tool. And so we have that I think put a little bit more pressure on us to finalize our Metamajors. I think we probably could have used a little bit more time for more discussion. Maybe it would have gone on forever, but I think we probably could have used some more time. But we didn't have it because we want to get our Pathways Mapper tool available by this summer so that students that are remote, not on campus, can access it. We have now, the tool isn't final, but like I said, we're hoping to implement it in June, and we have the Metamajors. And could I click on this to show you?
I think that would be kind of cool, yeah.
Yep, so here are our Metamajors.
Ooh, pretty. And
I do want to share one thing. At the very bottom right, we have this other areas of interest. So I'm sure that might be of interest. We don't have anything really in there yet. We are still figuring out how we are going to describe this and what our parameters will be. But we have some areas that, like our non-credit certificates, and ESL, for example. We have some other areas like religious studies where we have courses, but they don't lead to a degree or certificate. They're feeling very left out. I'm not exactly sure how we're going to use this, but that's what we're doing right now. But the rest of the Metamajors those are the names that we finalized. So feels good to have it in place and with maps connected to them. The last slide is sort of what we're going to do next. We'll officially launch the Metamajors next year. We're going to do a soft launch over the summer. We're going to create some marketing materials and an information education campaign in both English and Spanish for everyone, the community, because this is a out-facing tool, and then also our students. I met with some students last week, our Guided Pathways ambassadors, to figure out how they would like to see it advertised, marketed to them, what would be useful, where were the best place on the website to find the tool. And so that was really quite interesting. They were telling me how there's only a couple places that they go on the website, and the rest of it doesn't make sense to them. So anyway, that was, it's really great having students that you can go to, when you need to have those questions answered. We want to connect support services to all of the pathways in a systematic fashion, kind of like STEM is done at our college. It's really, they have tutors for STEM, and they have counselors for STEM, and a place to go, and it's all right there. We'd love to see that for all of the Metamajors. So that's one of our first goals for next year. And then we want to try to connect the math element to our Metamajors, since that is a big barrier for our students in terms of success and completion. And I think that was my last slide. Yes.
Thank you so much, Wendy. That's really
Welcome.
Wonderful. Congratulations on all your
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Wendy about the Palomar Metamajors process?
Quickly, what would you say was perhaps your biggest challenge in this process, would you say?
should have probably thought through that. I felt like it wasn't as challenging of a process as I thought it was going to be. And I think that some of our biggest challenges are yet to come. I just got an email because we sent out the link to the mapper tool for everybody to review their maps. And I've just started to get some feedback from people that are like, well, the philosophers are quite concerned about where they are, which Metamajor they're in, and somehow they missed all of the emails. So I think that idea that people weren't necessarily paying attention, now they're going to, and now it's in place. So we might get some, I really want to try to stay positive, especially around the mapper tool, but we might get some pushback. I think getting people to understand how important these Metamajors are moving forward for guided pathways, sort of that buy-in, that we really need to do this and we need to think through the process. And one more thing, I think getting people to think outside of our organizational structure now. We had so many great ideas from students in terms of names for our for the Metamajors that faculty were just not interested in. Really creative things like plants and animals or working with your hands. I'm not saying we would have necessarily picked those, but that's how students think about things, and really getting that student voice in there. So
we will have an opportunity for a question and answer portion with all of our panelists today at the end too. But Matthew, do you have a question you would like to ask?
No, I am not really a Metamajor person. I'm an IT guy coming in to learn more about Metamajors. And I am a sponge here today with little input, but lots of learning.
Well, we're so glad you can join us. Thank you. And
You're very
feel free
welcome.
to follow up with us in case you have any other questions you would like to ask.
Will do.
I have a question, Stacy, if I could ask Wendy. The first thing you mentioned was an activity, a card swap. Could you explain what that is?
Sure. So the card swap activity was, so we put all of our different degrees on cards. And then, so we had, several different packets of those. And then we would put people at a table, and basically we asked them to put them in areas that made sense. And then we took all of that data and looked at, basically looked at that to try to start our conversations. But it was really interesting. And when we divided out, when we looked at the students separately, their organizational structure was quite different than most of the faculty. Many, and not all. I mean, there was a lot of creativity, but really just stepping back and saying, where should these things go and what makes sense to somebody who's trying to figure out what they want to major in. So it's a great activity. I really encourage you to consider it, and I'd be happy to share the process with you.
Any other questions? Does anyone want to talk about their own experience with card swapping maybe? Well, shall we move on and hear more? Okay. So we're lucky to have Sophia Armenta, counselor and guided pathways leader from Cuyamaca College.
Yes.
Thank you, Sophia.
Yes, thank you. And Wendy, thank you for sharing your process. I would agree with you in that we had a similar experience at Cuyamaca, where coming down to deciding our Metamajors was actually quite easy, or at least easier than we thought it would be. Whereas now the big question comes, how do we embed this within the campus? And that seems to be the most challenging part for our campus right now. But what I'm going to do is just highlight a little bit about our process at Cuyamaca College. We call our Metamajors academic and career pathways. For short, we call them ACPs, which I know our MiraCosta folks also do the same thing. And so you can go to the next slide. But what we did is we had a similar structure last year where we had our guided pathways work split up into 4 teams, which were based on the 4 guided pathways pillars. And this initiative was really led by our Pillar 1 team. And it was back in fall of 2018 that we decided to dive right in as a guided pathways committee and start forming our ACPs. Kind of like Palomar, we saw this as really pivotal to our work in moving forward with other guided pathways initiatives. So what we did is we decided to go straight to the students first. We created these flyers. You'll see an example to the right. And we held 3 different days, events for students to come in and basically do a card sorting activity similar to what Palomar did. We advertised this through flyers around campus, through our social media accounts, and honestly, a lot of the students that we got in our sessions were those that we pulled kind of word of mouth, either from classrooms or in our counseling offices, or even the day of, like 10 minutes before our session started, we'd go to like the cafeteria area and bring students in. We lured students in by having food available for them, and we also for each session raffled off a $100 bookstore voucher. And so throughout those 3 days, we didn't get as many students as we would have hoped for, but we did get a total of 47, in which throughout those 3 days, they were split up, or I should say this, we didn't have 47 students throughout all 3 days, but they were broken up into that 3-day segment. So we had 11 groups in total, which were all broken up to about 4 students each, and we gave them laminated cards, which you can go to the next page or the next slide. So we gave them laminated cards of our various programs. We also gave each group a catalog, and we gave them a short spiel as to like how to look at these programs in our catalog, and we basically asked them to sort them how they felt made sense to them within those various groupings. I'd like to mention that we are part of a multi-district and that we also have Grossmont College in our district. And so we found that the majority of our students did attend both Grossmont and Cuyamaca. So that was kind of nice to know that we were able to kind of get the Grossmont student perspective as well in a way. But throughout this activity, we found that most students had a lot of fun doing this. We did our best as faculty and staff to kind of guide them through the process without gearing them into any sort of direction. We found that at times students had some confusion as to what various programs meant or what they, surveying, for example, or paralegal studies. There were times when we had to jump in and explain what those programs covered. But other than that, students mostly did this seamlessly and had a lot of fun while they were doing it. So once they grouped all of the majors into various clusters, we also asked them to name those clusters, in which, like Wendy said, they got very creative with the names that they came up with. You can go to the next slide. After those 3 days, we compiled all of the information and we were able to pull together 8 clusters that were most consistent across the 11 groups that worked on this activity. What we did when we had those 8 various clusters is we ended up bringing this to faculty and asking them their thoughts about where their programs were categorized within these clusters. There were just a few department areas that didn't like originally where students had placed their program. For example, there was some question at one point as to where economics should belong, if it belonged in business or social and behavioral sciences or even STEM. Same thing with paralegal studies. So there were times when we just left that up to the department and said, hey, wherever you think your program belongs best, please let us know. And we had them kind of make the final call. Once we had solidified those clusters and vetted it through faculty, we ended up going back out to the students and faculty via a survey. And we asked them how they felt these clusters should be named. And so for students in particular, we had iPads around campus, and they would take a quick survey that lasted about 5 minutes. We had people posted up around campus with iPads and would give out candy bars to any student who completed the survey. And then for faculty, we emailed them out a survey. Like Wendy said, we had not as much faculty feedback as we would have hoped for, so we ended up sending that survey, I would say, about 3 different times. In the end, we asked students and faculty how they'd like to name each cluster and what they'd like to call these clusters or meta majors overall. And we came up with academic and career pathways and the 8 ACP names that you see here. So this is a picture of our various ACPs. It wasn't until last spring 2019, or maybe it was summer 2019, that Academic Senate came in and said, we'd really like there to be a 9th ACP that covers exploration and enrichment. So for now, we also have that 9th one kind of down at the bottom, you'll see there. I agree in that we don't really know what we're doing with that yet, but we do see it as an opportunity for those students who don't quite feel like they belong in one of the other ACP communities, who are still undecided on their major, or perhaps are attending our campus for personal enrichment. We still want them to know they have a process and sort of community to identify with. So this flyer or page here that we've kind of been using around campus was actually created internally within our counseling office. We have a counselor who does an amazing job with branding. Her name's Mylin. Some of you guys may know her. And she and myself kind of worked together to figure out, well, what could we kind of just push out to start? We found these various logos and kind of created this sort of honeycomb theme, I guess you could say. We are not absolutely stuck on this branding, but it was just something to start with so that we could kind of get this moving and have it be a little bit more aesthetic and presentable. So you can go to the next slide. Thank you. In moving forward, our biggest challenge has been figuring out what these ACPs mean to students. To be honest, for the last academic year, 2019-2020, they've kind of just been a page in our catalog. And I wish there was more we could say about this, but we're really trying to figure out, like, how do students really identify with this? Do they know which ACP they belong to? How does the instructional side have to re-envision the way that they've been structured for so many years? I would say that one way we've incorporated ACPs into the student experience has been through our new Student Success Day, which we hold for new students every summer before they begin in the fall. And that was a great opportunity last summer for us to have faculty and counselors come together and really give more so like ACP specific orientations to students, where students could come in, learn a broad overview of our different ACPs, and then attend up to 2 sessions that they found they were most intrigued by. So that's one thing we were able to do. We also, over the past year and a half, have developed our program maps for each of our associate degrees and ADTs, in which those program maps have each ACP logo that it identifies with on there. But aside from that, there's really not much else going on. So things we see moving forward are, one, to figure out how we can really embed the ACPs into the onboarding process, which I believe all of us have received this pathway navigation grant, where we're really focusing on career planning before education planning. So we're doing our best to really have ACPs at the forefront of that. So when students come in and apply to our college, they get a better idea for what these different ACP communities are about, how it can help them in choosing a major moving forward. So we're trying to embed that more within the ACP, or I should say onboarding process. As well, we're starting conversations with our counterparts at Merced College, in which they are moving forward to form ACPs for their campus as well. They've responded very well to our ACPs, and I think are just continuing our work to do the same for their students by having our already made clusters, but also we're open to modifications as they have many programs that we don't have, like theater arts or culinary arts, for example. So we're really curious to kind of dive into deeper discussions with them and see how we can come together. And then lastly, I would say that we've started, as of this past year, conversations related to student success teams. We've done a lot of research on our campus to see what student success teams look like throughout the state. And that's where I really see these ACPs coming to life, when you have sort of like this holistic group of faculty and staff and peer mentors who are guiding students along their journey, who identify with a specific ACP so that students have a community of support that they can go to. That's where I see these ACPs coming to life. There's a lot more conversations we need to have with instruction, but that's where we are right now with everything.
Thank you, Sophia. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Does anyone have questions for Sophia?
I have a question. This is Luke from Mercosta. Thank you very much, Sophia. Wow, I'm very impressed. Well, by both of you, Wendy and Sophia, for the processes you just described. And I was just in a meeting with Chris right before this one, where we were talking about, you know, how do we revive, you know, or get a talk, or I guess get faculty to understand the value of maps and what ACPs are and why we've designed it this way. I guess we're suffering from a little bit of, like, we've been in this a little bit too long now. We've forgotten where to go next. But we're working on that. But the question I had for that either one of you could answer is, as I was thinking about what you were saying, is that we went through a similar process, right, in developing our Metamajors and our developing the ACPs. And I really like some of the ideas that you brought forward that I hope that we can take back as well, like adding an additional ACP that's maybe for undecided or for other areas of interest. But what have you discussed, perhaps a process for, say, faculty or disciplines deciding later down the road if they wanted to switch ACPs or Metamajors, and or could they be in multiple Metamajors, and what does that mean or look like?
That's an interesting question, Luke. We have not discussed the second point you brought up as to having a program belong in two ACPs, or Metamajor areas, I should say. But we have from the beginning been very clear about the fact that this is changing, and we are flexible as a campus to say, hey, you know, child development isn't working here. We think we'd be better here. Whatever that means, I would say the dialogue we've been having from the beginning has been, we're trying this out. This is just a pilot, and we're flexible to move things around if needed.
We've done the same thing. I've tried to say all along, every time I was in presenting or discussing, is that this is where we're starting, because we heard Bakersfield went through like 3 iterations of their Metamajors. So at least that's what I heard. I hope that was correct. So I know that we're going to have to change ours as well. And I think the point that you brought up, the question, we need to grapple with that. We need to, because like I said, I've already gotten 3 emails in the last week with people sort of now they're questioning where they are. So we do need to have some kind of a process and a timeline for when, you know, we can revisit this, because we can't be doing it, you know, all the time, especially when you start having marketing tools out there or marketing pieces that already have everything listed. So yeah, maybe I'll reach out to you once we figure it out, Luke, because that is a goal for this summer, to come up with something.
And I think this is actually a really great time to turn to our other RCs. I think this is a great question to think about how, or learn from you what's happening in your region, and have colleges in your region grappled with similar questions.
Would you like to go first? You want to go first, Wendy?
Sure. One of the things that we've seen at least in the Central Valley, not so much a question of what if I don't fit here? What if I fit over there? Because there was one college in particular that spent so much time onboarding their college to guided pathways. They spent an entire year onboarding everybody, classify, faculty, counseling, admin, everybody at their college, and understanding guided pathways. And so once that took place, any other discussions about meta majors and subsequent work in the pillars moved quite much faster than compared to other colleges, right? And so I think there was a lot more buy-in because of the inclusion and the intentionality of how the work was planned. For example, for their meta major grouping activities, they reached 95% of their faculty, which was pretty high. And again, this was premeditated. This was done pretty heavily in over a course of 2 days. And Katherine was my partner back then when we did card sorting activities, and how we also worked on designing principles for coming up with meta majors. And so I think the inclusion and the cross-functionality of these approaches help people to get more buy-in and have everybody on the same page. So there was a lot less questions about, well, wait a minute, can we go back and go, you know, what if I fit over here? What if I fit over there? Because all of those discussions happen during those activities. Can you think of anything else in the Central Valley, Katherine?
I really love, Lara, when we were at Merced, while the faculty and staff were sorting degrees and certificates and in one area, there was a whole nother room right off the cafeteria where students were doing that sorts real time. And I know both the college folks mentioned that it was so nice to have student perspectives at Merced and really helped, I thought, ground the work.
Absolutely right. There's another college also that did that thought about doing the sorting with faculty and staff and then sharing that with students, but then they went back to the drawing table and they say, wait a minute, let's do this separate and see what we come up with and move in tandem. So that was a really interesting approach. Another college, they did the sorting in a hybrid method. So they did it face-to-face, and then they also did using an online platform. So it was easier to disseminate again with students in a number of classes. So they had a much larger input from students, but they had an amazing feedback at the end. So two different approaches.
I really wanted to share, I heard in one of the voices that spoke up, sometimes guided pathways is like a kitchen remodel. I think our colleagues from Sierra shared, and you get so deep into it, it just becomes overwhelming, like, what are we doing here? And so I love that meta majors can get you back to your why. Why did you start all of this? And it's lovely because it reminds us that meta majors are for the students. They're not necessarily for the faculty and staff. That we have a huge amount of gold at the community college, and some of it is hidden by our processes and our language. And what meta majors do is they take all of that incredible gold, the superpowers, and make it front-facing for the students of this is what the college has for you. And then in the meta majors, what we'll really be able to do is provide supports that are really customized based on what the students are studying. And so think about the meta majors as a vessel. And so those two things often are a beautiful way to start or restart the meta major conversation. I've worked with colleges that have mapped first, and they felt that was really helpful, and worked with colleges that have mapped second. So I think if mapping first is a good way to get folks engaged and build on your ADT work or your AB 705 mapping work, or even the maps that folks turn into curriculum committee when they submit, those are really beautiful places to work. And I saw that work really well at Skyline and Cabrillo, where counseling faculty got to really shine because they shared that they do this mapping in their sleep. I really believe inclusion is the solution. And I've really been blown away by faculty and staff that have robustly included adult education and non-credit in the meta major sort. Also, instructional student servicing, counseling, faculty, and staff. So is there a place where everyone can join? And online virtual provides such a neat opportunity. Also being very inclusive of CTE, because often CTE was the original Metamajor, and they have some great information to share with us. And in many ways, they'd like to join other Metamajors and really make those connections. And at Skyline, we had a lovely sort, and I think we just decolonized CTE. And it was when the CTE courses were placed in the, or the CTE programs of study were placed in the STEM pathway, because the STEM faculty recognized that for solar photovoltaic and electric cars, those students were doing the same institutional learning outcomes that they were doing in the STEM Metamajor. It was really exciting. And then I think my last one is, if you can't include everyone at the table all the time, which is absolutely reasonable in a pandemic that we're currently in, consider having a robust group of people make the design principles that Lara noted. And Skyline really went down deep. They made design principles for how they were going to do guided pathways, so agreements or norms, how they were going to do Metamajors, that they would be student-facing, they would be inclusive, they would be efficient and look for kind of double-doubles. And then also they made design principles for how they were going to name the Metamajors, again, student-facing. And I have those, and I'll share those with Stacy and Wendy in case that might be of service. And in that, in design principles, absolutely the inclusion of student voice. And we saw this really at Ohlone, and I know several of you mentioned it. There was kind of an effort to make things very, kind of student friendly. And the students were like, we'd like you to call it STEM. And so it was really nice to get that voice. And then finally, if everything else isn't seeming to ground this or get this moving, start launching exactly as your counselors did. Start putting something in the Metamajor vessels and test it out. Your colleagues up north have started, or actually in Santa Ana College, have started using it for outreach, and they're doing it virtually with the chairs that are in each Metamajor, doing outreach to non-credit students, providing the counseling support within the Metamajors, basic needs within Metamajors. And then finally, our colleagues at Diablo Valley College just created Canvas shells for each of the Metamajors to provide the students job support as we're all online and many students are looking for work. So I just thought those things might be of service as folks are either restarting or starting guided pathways, Metamajors. And I'll share that link with you guys right away to the design principles from Skyline.
Thanks, Katherine.
Oh, you're welcome. Sorry, that was so many words.
I just think you have a wealth of experience and knowledge, and I'm really happy that you were here to share them with us.
I had a question.
Go for it, Chris.
Thanks. Yeah, I wanted to touch back onto Sophia's, Luke had asked a question or mentioned something about the exploratory ACPs, and this is kind of a question for all four panelists in terms of what you've either experienced or, and I almost didn't want to ask it because I know Sophia said that they're sort of going to have discussions to come. But I think one of the tensions that always goes with this work early on is this question of, are we tracking students into these pathways, or are we not giving them opportunities to explore, right? And then that, the other tension that goes along with exploration is the idea that by doing that particular type of pathway, let's say, is there, that means that there's still going to have to be conversations about how do you guide students within that structure so that they're not, ending up exploring so long that they can't get onto a pathway where they can keep their units down. I mean, part of the purpose of guided pathways is to help them be focused and keep their units at a manageable level. So I'm kind of curious, and so Sophia, it sounds like you're conversations are yet to come about the details of your pathway. And I don't know if maybe some of the RCs too have seen other colleges struggle with this and whether or not they've found solutions.
I would say that we've really looked at this from a lens of, let's say, like ACP communities or student success teams. So prior to COVID-19, we started to assign faculty on the counseling and instructional side, or rather it was volunteers who were willing to start piloting like what a student success team could look like. And it was through this that we had our career counselor volunteer to be a part of this exploratory ACP, where they're saying, hey, for those students who declare that they're undecided, I would love to work with them in really supporting them through their journey getting started. So I would say when it came to ACP student success teams in particular, we saw how we could have a holistic team support students who were undecided and who were still exploring. That's as far as the conversations have gone for us as to what this looks like more tangibly.
Thanks.
I got to interview some faculty at CUNY LaGuardia, and they talked about the movement of students between their meta majors that might be helpful, Chris, to your thinking. And what they did is they really said, we want to build into the curriculum the exploration and the sensing out of the network and the group really in that first. So English, math, and then a themed kind of counseling 101. And they were able that by the time students hit December, they had a sense of whether this was the right meta major for them. And if it wasn't, they rapidly helped them crosswalk to another meta major, and yet they've done all of those assessment type things. So that example I really spoke to me. And you see similar work in Rhode Island with their road maps, which I think are hilariously named. And they have an exploratory map as well that allows you to kind of do that very structured exploration. It's vast, but you've got a lot of support around you. And the final example was at College of the Canyons, looking at if you've indicated you're not sure of your major, that they immediately reach out and have a hub where you can come and talk to pathway coaches for each of the pathways. You can get support looking at what are the community jobs in their region, and then you can get counseling support to do assessments, a choose your major course. So really front loading all of the incredible resources, especially of counseling faculty and staff, so that they are almost inescapable through the curriculum pathway.
Okay, so they're moving them, they're having those conversations, they're still in pathways of some kind, but allowing them to have more information to choose which pathway, and then like LaGuardia, really giving them an opportunity to still explore and be able to easily switch if they need to. Thank you.
And I'll add a couple things. One, from out of state, while working with a number of colleges in the Central Valley, a lot of folks would say, just give me an answer. Just tell me how many meta majors. Just tell me, right? And I always talk about the Florida example, how that was mandated from the top down, and people were like, wait, no, don't tell me what to do. Let me figure out. And it's like, what's a happy medium, right? But going back to your question, Chris, I would push back a little bit about what we're currently doing for tracking and limiting student choice, right? So one of the most interesting discussions I've had with faculty was during one of the sorting activities for meta majors. We had a faculty that was really disengaged during the activity, and she was in the back of the room with her arms crossed, and she was very anti-guided pathways, and this is limiting student choice, and she was not participating. So after the activity, I reached out to her and I said, hey, what's going on? Can you tell me what are your thoughts? Please share with me how you're feeling. And she said, well, I'm really dissatisfied. I don't think this is fair. This is not right for students. We're limiting, this is just not right for them. And I said, okay, tell me more about that. So she said, oh, you know what? I'm just not happy about how each of the buckets, each of the clusters were created. I mean, look at the height of each cluster. And I was like, what's going on here? She's like, look at how many cards our NH section. And I was like, yeah, tell me more about it. You know, I love to dig. And so she's like, well, look at all the options that we're offering students in our agricultural program, and look at the options that we're offering in our STEM program. And I was like, oh, tell me more about that, please. She was like, there's all these, and there's like a handful in STEM. And I was like, what does that mean? Are you already limiting your students by offering this? And he was just like, oh my God, wait a minute. You know, what are we currently doing? And so the question turned, and she was like, wait, are we moving towards having the same options across all buckets? And I was like, or is that where you want to move? Or can you lean into your sister colleges? How can you work with your district colleges to provide more resources for students so that you're all covering your students' needs? You're not the only one providing STEM, or you're not the only one providing agricultural and natural resources, but how can you lean on each other, right? And I think this is an opportunity to push back a little bit as to how you're currently tracking and limiting student choice, and how you could potentially provide a resource for them, and lean on your sister colleges in your district if you have a multi-college district.
Yeah, thank you. And there's so many equity questions, I think, in terms of the Metamajors and understanding, especially what student populations are also potentially still being tracked, right, into certain Metamajor areas. I did want to get back to the kind of essence of the original question, because we have another colleague from our region on the line around the explorations in that undecided Metamajor and kind of some thinking behind that. So Curie from Southwestern, if you wouldn't mind chiming in, we would love to kind of hear more about your process and thoughts down there.
Sure. You know, the college our college a few years ago decided that students could no longer choose explorations or undecided major for financial aid reasons, right? And I had been running the Career Center, and then it was very difficult to try to figure out who really needed help. So when we did do what we're calling fields of study, we did bring back, and because we also wanted to capture, like Sophia mentioned, folks from the community who just wanted to come take Italian because they're going to Italy. So we have explorations and undecided, and that's allowing us to capture students who are truly undecided. And then we're able to reach out to them and see if they need help from the Career Center, or if maybe they want to be an FYE where they do get that, you know, it's not orientation to college, it's a lifelong success class, but they do investigate interests and majors and personality and what fits for them and how to research careers. So, we have on our CCC Apply now, it starts with our fields of study. So if they go to explorations and undecided, their choices in there are basically our liberal arts degrees. So we get a sense if they might have more of a slant for arts or math or humanities or social behavioral. So we're working with that, and we're probably going to do our second pilot with our field of study groups on that undecided and career explorations. The intention is not for folks to live there forever. The goal is to have them out of that field of study by by the end of their first semester. As they're registering, they have a new major and a new field of study. But we really needed a way to identify folks so we could help them. We didn't really have that anymore.
Great, thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you, Carrie. I love hearing the voice of experience, and there's so much to learn from all of you, but this hour is almost up.
Good point.
So thank you so much to everyone who came, and a special thank you to Wendy and Sophia and Katherine and Laura, my partner Stacy. Anyway, please join the Vision Resource Center if you haven't already. You can use any work email for it. It's filled with staff and faculty resources and communities. I just went through a bunch of modules on something. I really enjoy their modules, and I feel like I learn a lot and get a lot of resources from them. I recommend them highly. You can also join the COVID-19 and Guided Pathways communities. I especially recommend the Wednesday morning Chancellor's Office webinar. I get a lot out of that. They won't be having it this week, but it'll be Wednesday the 27th. And you can check out the latest thoughts of the Chancellor's Office on the emergency situation we're in. Stacy and I also have a listserv, so feel free to join that. We update you with various tidbits that we find and let you know about things like our office hour and other events. So you can follow the instructions there or just email Stacy and she'll sign you up to the listserv. Finally, Tuesday, June 23rd is our second office hour from 4 to 5 o'clock, and our topic is student engagement and guided pathways design. You get a chance to learn from regional and state practitioners like you did today, and we'll keep on talking about what you want to hear about and keep on focusing our office hours on what you want. If you are a campus working with students, we're going to hear from Palomar again. Thank you, Palomar. But if you've worked with students in terms of ambassadors or helping out with guided pathways in any capacity, even if you've just started, we'd love to hear from you. So please email Stacy for more information on that too.